Hello, my name is Derek Bartels. I'm the Director of Innovation and Technology for Lutheran Education Queensland. It's a district and a system of schools across Queensland, Lutheran schools, and it's one of the regions of Lutheran education in Australia, 3 other regions crossing Australia. My role is about affecting contemporary change across our schools, and really my role is about redefining school for now and for the future. And part of that is looking at contemporary learning, part of that is looking at ubiquitous technologies, part of that is also enabling change across our professionals, across the workforce, that's including teachers and leadership and all staff involved in the community of Lutheran education. Some of the key technologies which I think are hot at the moment are technologies that are emerging to do with artificial intelligence. Those technologies, whether they be software-based or hardware-based, is really starting to change the landscape of education. It's changing the landscape in terms of contemporary learning education, and this is accelerating at a rapid pace. We aren't just talking about programming and coding of interfaces, but we're talking about artificial intelligence. We're talking about artificial intelligence being used in a number of arenas to be able to assist in learning those students throughout the diverse spectrum of learning. And I think that's a really major component of the push at the moment. Also, I've noticed, particularly in Asia, there's a big push, probably even greater than I'd say in this part of Asia than in Australia, is the work in terms of makerspaces and the maker movement. I have seen a huge amount of increase in terms of engagement in makerspaces and using it in relevant ways to support learning across schools. I think some of the key challenges have been around for a while, but might be contextualised a little bit differently now. But one of the major key challenges is for educators and educational leaders to be able to choose effectively and to be able to implement effectively the use of technologies in meaningful and deep and rich ways to improve learning, which otherwise would not be possible. And I think this is a large factor we have to take into account in lots of initiatives in education, not just in technology, but in technology particularly, because we've seen some very dumb uses of technology through history that hasn't improved learning and could have been done much better without technology. So it's about choosing the technology and knowing when to use the technology in relevant ways to improve learning in deep, meaningful and rich ways which would otherwise not be possible. I think over the next 2 to 5 years we're going to see a lot more use of technology to examine big data, to work with data analytics, to really work with examining student learning, school systems, schools, to be able to interrogate that data. And that data is not the only picture, we know, but I think there's going to be a lot more smarts that are going to evolve through technology to be examined, that data, and to be able to provide some ways to act on that data. That's going to be a large component to move forward. Obviously, I guess some of the big things over the next future is the further use of artificial intelligence, and particularly as our schools look to become more contemporary models, whereby focusing less on content and development of 21st century skills and contemporary skills, such as being resilient, having grit, critically thinking, students embracing failure, students being able to collaborate and co-work and work independently and work on teams. Now that's going to require a real major shift in the use of technologies, and we're going to see technologies that support that and become a lot more ubiquitous and encourage individualised learning, and even more so is designed to support the learner in developing those skills in an experiential way, such that they can work at their own pace, anywhere, anytime. It's really important for educators to be able to grasp the contemporary research that is currently happening in terms of what schooling should be looking like now and what it should look like for the future. So educators, first of all, need to look at best practice around the world. And unfortunately, we still have a lot of schools and school systems still operating in that core essence of 130 years ago, of that industrial model. And we really need to look at the new practices and look at some great models around the world. I think teachers really need to prepare themselves by actually viewing that and digging deeply in terms of looking at what that looks like in itself. I just brought back 33 leading principals from two schools from brought them back from California, looking at some innovative schools there. And it was really good to get them to see and to dig down deeply in what some of this contemporary practice looks like when it's involved in experiential learning, project-based learning, developing those soft skills that we talked about, resilience, grit, embracing failure, co-working, collaborating, being resilient. What does that look like and how do we develop those individuals for a contemporary world? So I think, to answer your question, teachers, first of all, need to become more aware of that best practice. They need to establish ways and support to be able to get buy-in, and then they need to start tinkering and hacking their own classrooms or their own schools or their own school systems to develop some of this contemporary practice. Asia has been wonderful because just even in just a short time wandering around EduTECH Asia, it's actually provided a good venue and a good hub for a number of people around the world to come and talk about the future of learning, also talk about how learning is now. But I've noticed this wonderful theme that's starting to flow through the conference, talking about the future of learning, and there's a sense and there's a level of concern and some sense of positive urgency that we need to transform, and we need to make technologies more ubiquitous, make them more meaningful to support learning in a contemporary world. And that's brought people together, and just wandering around here in the conversations, sure, there's a lot of conversations about technology, but it's great to see the great to see the conversations centering around contemporary learning, which technology in ubiquitous ways is going to support.